this way and I run into this problem, speak up. So it's more of a collaborative than me just yammering on. You're well aware of the fact that I can keep going and going. So feel free to interrupt and throw out some questions. So I'm going to try to do it in just a couple different steps, kind of increasing, I think, the complexity. So the stuff that we're doing in the beginning, I think you should be able to catch and do, or maybe already do. And the stuff that we're doing, towards the end might be a little bit more diving into the program, or stuff that you could reach out to one of us and say, hey, I need help doing this. We went over correcting and voiding and changing a Word document to a PDF so we can get it signed, but we'll get to that stuff. So any questions before we get started? I'm going to share my screen.
And I do just want to let everyone know that I'm going to record this, and if it comes out well, then we're going to be able to refer back to it. So just let everyone know.
All right, so I think you can see Zipforms right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first, and then did it jump to DocuSign?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just not sure that it's mirroring on mine, but that's fine. So the first thing, Jess gave everybody their DocuSign logins. So you should be able to, if you haven't been in here, you should be able to get in there through that list of logins that Jess sent out about 2-3 weeks ago. If you need help on that, then reach out to Jess or someone to get your password. But this is the screen you're typically met with when you sign in. The idea of this one is, and I bookmarked this if you see it up here on the top. This is if you've sent something, or if you have a document that got sent through your name. If it was sent through Wendy, you're not going to be able to find it here. But if it was sent through your account, even if it was sent through Zipforms, which we'll get to next, it's going to show up here when you log into DocuSign. So you can come in. Mine auto-populates. Chrome should do that for you. And hopefully it doesn't take all day to load. And this is the home screen you're going to come in at. The stuff down here on the left, so action required is typically anything that you personally need to sign. So if you're a part of a lead form, it's going to show up here as action required. Waiting for others is certainly stuff that you've sent out to other people. That's where you're going to end up at most. Expired, I don't know the exact expiration date on these, but they won't sit out there forever. They will expire, and they'll pop up here. Typically, our transactions are moving fast enough that things aren't going to expire. And then completed are certainly where you go to find documents. So if you're going in there to try to find something under completed, these are old documents that have been sent out. So if you're coming in here and you're looking for a specific person, Danik on Ledge East, so we know that the status is here, that it's been done. I know it's in there and it's signed. You can search up here for their name and find it. It will pull up that whole list. So click on it. You'll see examples of these down here on the right-hand side, so you can know that, if you were looking for the lead form and say, wait a minute, this is not the lead form, this is the PNS. So that maybe is not what I'm looking for. Give you a quick shot there. I was going to download that one, but maybe I shouldn't open up PNS. Let's see what this one is. So here's a release of escrow. This little box here, so you can print them if you wanted to, if you needed them and you were at work and you needed them for paper or for Wendy. This download box, when this pops open, so this is all just about being able to go get something that you want signed. It will email it to you, but if you don't find it in your email box, you should be able to pop in here, find it under that name. So it's going to check all these boxes initially, and all files, meaning if you have 4 or 5 documents in there, it's going to give you all of them. There's certificate of completion. That's just a document that states who it went to, names, dates, all that stuff. You don't necessarily need that. So I usually just come in here and take just the document itself and skip that certificate of completion. If you click on the document will download. In Chrome, it downloads down here on the bottom. So you get this running list of things that you've recently downloaded. If the one thing that we could look at, if we find one, it's a little tricky. If we find one, let's see what he's got here. This is not under agreement anymore. So if you have more than one document, it will pull it down as, let me see if it'll do it. It's going to pull it down in a condensed form. It's zipped, which is going to make it a little easier or a little trickier to get to. Let's try this one. So this one, you can see there are 6 files. And a lot of times you can say, okay, I just want the PDFs. I don't need that certificate of completion. So I just want the documents that he signed. So I'm going to hit download. You'll see them pop up down here again on Chrome. If they're not doing that for you, let us know. We can try to figure out how to get this bar to show up. But when you download them, it's going to show up in this compressed folder. And if you see this folder down here, if you can see it, it's got a little zipper on it, meaning that the files are condensed. So they're a little harder to work with. You can open them. But it's going to be a little harder to get them open and to manipulate them. So what I usually do is I cut them out and I'm going to save them to, this was, so if you cut them out of here, if you saw what I do, she'll highlight them, right click on them, and cut them out of there. And you can put them in a folder. One thing you can do is I have on my desktop, I just have a temp folder. You can go into here, open up a folder, and then just paste them in there. So this is, some people save stuff to their desktop, others don't. But if you want a running copy of that, yeah, Eddie.
Brendan, I don't see your screen. It's black.
Oh, okay, hold on. Please move this window. Is it back?
No, now you're not sharing, so now you have to reshare. Yep, now we can see it.
Okay. Eddie, did you have a question, or were you just saying the screen was black?
Eddie, you have to unmute yourself. You muted yourself.
So I don't know where we went black on there, but if you're cutting these out, so we're back in DocuSign, you're in the home page. You go into completed because you're trying to find something that somebody has signed in the past. Scroll through until you find them. So I'm looking for couture, or you can type them up here in this search box. This little download button pops up in the corner. So if you want to copy it, there's other options here. The history of it. You can put it into Excel and stuff like that. I haven't used that stuff. Create a copy. That's just going to copy it into DocuSign and be able to resend it back out again. But we're not going to get into that detail. So any questions on going in and finding it? If you're in DocuSign, you should be able to go under completed, find who you're looking for, find this little tray, download it. You only need the documents itself. You don't need that certificate. Hit the download button. It's going to pop up in this corner. If it's one document, it'll open right up. And you can access it. And once you scroll over it, these things will pop up. You can download it again. Download is the same as save. So a lot of programs will have that little disk in the corner, or it'll say save. Download's going to be the same thing in a sense. It's going to bring it down onto your computer, and then there's certainly print as well. basics of just going to find something if you've already got it signed in your box. Any questions before we move into Zipforms? Okay, so Zipforms, this looks familiar to everybody. So I have if you back up a little bit, I have a blank transaction that I'm going to work out of this one for now, but I just have a transaction called blank. So if someone says, oh, I want an example of a buyer agency agreement, I can go into the blank transaction and pull up a blank one. For our purposes today, the one thing that I'm using here, documents is where you're going to find your typical documents. So this is where you're editing your normal documents. I have taken the steps to go ahead and put parties in, and I don't know if anyone's using this. So it allows you to enter each party. So if you're doing a new transaction, certainly a buyer, I've gotten into a really good habit of putting these people in as a party to a transaction. So a little extra step, it'll auto-populate into the document once you type it in there once. So name, address, email address, and then this little box is usually saved. So save as a contact, come down here and hit save. The advantage of that is that when you come back, say they get out, they lose out on the first offer, you can always come back and find them again. Type in John Doe. There it is. And it's going to auto-populate everything. Addresses, email address. It's going to put, and if you've got two different people, two different clients, it's going to put them all right back into that contract again. So just a little step to help populate it. If you do this here, it's going to save you some steps later on when you're trying to get stuff signed as well. So trying to use that, I'll show that again. It's up here in this party section. Parties of the contract. We can go over Zipforms another day, but you can add yourself in there to be a party of the contract all the time. So documents, everyone should be typically familiar with this setup in here. It's just our typical documents that we use, and you should be able to get in, edit those. Now at this point, if you want to take a document, so say we're going to add this COVID-19 addendum to a contract, right? We had the thing plug it along, but now we need some assurances. So you can see John Doe is already populated in here because I put John in as a party. The date is wrong because that was when I created this folder, so I can always buzz through here. Right. The date. Yeah.
So what I have a problem with this is I end up, when I put these, that's the first time I've really seen a COVID-19 addendum, but that's another story. If I go in there to prepare documents,
yeah,
and I want to send them to somebody,
yeah,
either do it as a PDF or the other, for some reason, that's very convoluted for me.
Okay, well let's do.
So what I end up doing is it's the easier way. I send it with an e-sign thing and say, don't sign this, but just read it.
So you send it as a PDF to them. You just email it to them as a document.
The easiest way for me, because it always gets confused, is to go right to e-sign. And
this one right here.
Just tell them not to sign it till we correct it and review it.
Right.
It's like because the other way, when it's sitting there, and I'm going to email it to somebody, it comes up with a couple of boxes, which it says they successfully send them, but nobody ever gets it.
But nobody ever gets them. So I'm a big proponent. There's a couple different ways. I know some people do this, some people don't. If you go into my computer, this is the under agreements. So I have a folder for everybody's transaction. And if you go into, this is Christmas Mountain gas bill. So I've got everything saved in here. So they're all the PDFs. So if I'm looking for the purchase and sales agreement, if I'm looking for the most recent addendum, I've got pictures. That's a beautiful picture. And earnest money deposits. So I save it. A lot of people don't. A lot of people just allow Wendy to hold those files. I share that with you because in here, you can take this. So this is that COVID-19. We'll look at this again in a second, but this is in there. And to find it, if you go into all forms and you just type COVID, so we back up. So it'll come up like that with the addendums. They're all alphabetical order. If you type in COVID, the addendum will show up and you can add it to your list. I have been using this, but we can get into that conversation a little bit later. So you
anybody else been using that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and when I come back to us signing this, you can read it on your own, but I'll show you what the 3 boxes that are in here. I'll show you what they are. So right up here is save as a PDF. And Eddie, tell me if you're running into this. So if you hit save as a PDF, are you seeing these boxes?
Yes.
Okay. So save in the transaction means all it's going to do is save this as a hard copy into that original transaction. So if I hit save, all it's going to do is just save it. Let me go back. So there's the COVID-19. So there's the one we're working on. It still looks like a typical form. This is it that I just saved, and it saved it as a PDF, meaning I can't edit it. It's just a solid document. So
Will you
that's
go
what
ahead and send that to me?
I will. I'll send it to you at the end because we're going to run through this for a second and I'll show you what is in here. And like I said, you can find it. It's up here. So if you go into a transaction, if you just type in COVID, it'll pop up.
No, I can find them, but when I go to email them,
so that's what we're getting to. So you can do one of 2 things. You can save as a PDF. You want to save to my device. So this is save to the transaction, gets it stuck on your computer. Save to my device puts it into your computer. Okay. This is going to do the same. Let me go back because we want more than one, or it's gonna make it simple. So if you go save as a PDF, so we want to email these to someone. You can't send a Zipforms thing to someone because it won't open. But if you save as a PDF, we want to take the New Hampshire agency disclosure and we want to take the COVID-19. Okay, so I'm checking the 2 that I want. I'm going to hit next. It's going to ask me, do I want to save in my transaction? All it's going to do is copy it, so I don't want to do that. I want to save to my device. Save it as a single PDF, so that's going to combine it all into one piece of paper, which we probably don't want. So save as separate files, okay? So I almost consistently save as a PDF, save as separate files, so you can separate them again. You're going to go into save. It's going to pop up and ask you to download them, okay? And there's that zip word. So when I hit this, what's going to happen is it's going to pop up down here in the corner again, and there's that file with a zipper. So it's pulled them down, but they're compressed. And this is getting a little technical, but you can't do much with these right now. They're going to be hard to email, and they're also kind of hard to find. They're over here in your box. They're under this downloads. They pop up under here because you just downloaded them. So when they show up, if you highlight them, cut them, and then I would put them in, these are all under agreement. So for now, I'm going to put them in this temp folder. All right, so they pop up in here, and there's the COVID-19 addendum that we were just working on with John Doe. So now you can email this out of here. So you've got this as a PDF. Now you can come in here. I can open an email. I can go to Eddie, COVID, spelled it wrong. But so you hit that attachment.
You've got 2 forms, though.
So the two downloaded, if I go into desktop, right, and just because this is where I put them. So you can either create one file where you put everything, or you can create a file per person. So I'm going to go into DocuSign.
When you send that, you have to put the 2 PDFs the way you set it up.
Yeah, so I'm going to do the COVID-19 and I'm going to do the New Hampshire Commission. Those are the two that I just pulled down. They're going to have other people's names on it, right?
Thank you.
So insert. Now that, so these aren't signable, right? These are just PDFs. So if Wendy's asking for something, you can copy it right here and send it off. So let's jump into, I'll send this to you, Eddie.
I'll be right back.
Let's jump into getting it signed. So down here, I've got this new addendum I want to add. I just typed it up. I've got the right date on there. I don't have a seller yet, but that's fine. The COVID addendum, you can read through this. This is the bigger clause, force majeure clause. It's some legal term, but that's the basis for this clause right there is force majeure. And then you're going to come down here, agrees to postpone the closing by X number of days if something happens. So if Alpine Title shuts down and they say we can't do closings for 14 days, you can use this addendum to say there's a force majeure, meaning something caused this that we couldn't control. We got 14 days to extend the closing until Alpine Title opens back up again. Box number 2 says that even if you get through your contingency, your loan contingency, so you're 2 days before closing, and the buyer loses their job because of COVID, they can terminate the agreement and still get their deposit back. So it extends, for COVID, it extends their contingency agreement to the end. The third one is a termination. So you can send this if people agree that that you're going to back out of the agreement because of COVID. You wouldn't use these other two. You just check off number 3, and it says the buyer and seller agree to terminate the agreement and give their money back. So it's kind of like a release of escrow. I mean, you would need the release of escrow with this, but this is an addendum that says COVID has blown up this contract. Okay, so let's say we're gonna check this off. The buyer got really sick and is on a ventilator, and we're gonna have somebody sign. That's kind of morbid, but we're gonna have John Doe sign this addendum. So you've got it in here. You're gonna hit e-sign because that's what we want. We want a signature. Everyone should pop up with this default DocuSign. So just make sure that that is saying DocuSign. Zipforms has their own. It's kind of cumbersome, the digital ink, but you want to make sure you're using DocuSign because we all have that. This is what it's going to be called in their inbox, this COVID-19 addendum. So make sure you can put their name on it, what have you. It's going to come under your name, but that's what it's going to look like when it shows up. So make sure it says DocuSign. That's what it's going to come up as, and we're going to hit next. So when you hit next, it's going to ask you who's signing. So I want John to sign, okay, if it'll let me check it off. If this were a lead paint form, I need to sign it as well. So I'm going to add myself, and I'm going to hit close. Okay, so these are the signers. You can grab them right here and move them. If you want to sign first, you can move them back and forth. And I'll show you in the next step as well how you can do that. So you're going to go to next. This is where you're going to jump. Zipforms is going to throw you into DocuSign. So now you're kind of in another program, but still, this up here is all Zipforms. This down here, it's logging me into DocuSign. And you'll see that this looks like it did when we were back in the last one. Does this look familiar to most people?
Hey, Brendan, for the signing order, back in this previous step, just something to be aware of, and I'm sure I think that you know this now, but when you choose a signing order, it defaults number 1 and number 2. If you put everyone at number 1, then they'll all get it at the same time, and it won't be dependent on that first person.
Correct. And so that can get super frustrating if you need to sign it and you've got 2 other people that need to sign it, and you've got one person who says, I'm at work until 5, and they're number 1, everyone else has to wait.
Right.
Okay. So the one hang up, Zipforms, we're going to go back to this in a minute. You'll see it again. Zipforms dumps you into DocuSign, but they dump you right into the actual document. What I always do is go back up here to the back button. And if you hit back, this is what Jess was just talking about. Now you're going to get to the first page, and we're going to hit this again one more time. But this is the launch page for a new document. So there's our COVID addendum. You can view it, make sure it's the right one. Okay. Here's the signing order. So John's going to sign first, and I'm going to sign. If I Jess was saying either make everybody one, so it'll go out at the same time, or what I don't do, you can do it. You can put, if you have both parties, if you're a disclosed dual, you can put all the parties in here and it will send it to them in order. I don't ever do it because it's just a recipe for disaster. The buyer signs it and then calls you and says, I signed it, but I'm wondering if we were to do this instead. While they called you, it already sent it to the seller. So I don't put both parties in here at the same time if you're working for both sides. The other thing to do is just check that. There's a box right here, set signing order. If you just check that box, it'll get rid of the order and anybody and everybody can sign. So I've got John Doe set up here. It's got my email address, and I'll show you because it's going to send it to me. I've got myself because I need to sign it. And then if I need to add recipient, the other thing you can do is you can add someone else in here. So I'm going to throw Linda in here because it's Saco River Run maybe. And so Linda doesn't need to sign it, but I can come over here to needs to sign and I can change it to receives a copy. So now once this fully gets signed, Linda's going to get a copy. You can even put Wendy in here and now receives a copy. So Wendy's going to get a copy of this once it all gets signed. So if you're signing an addendum and you're on the seller side and you've got the final addendum and you want her to get it at the same time, you can add her in there. And then to get rid of somebody, just X them out. Down here, you can write a note, please. It's just me, I always can't spell. I always write in here, please review, instead of please sign. And to me, it's just a nuance of, I'm sending this to you to take a look at it and to review it. And sometimes I'll say, once signed, I will forward. I don't want to be in a position, and it's very nuanced, I don't want to be in a position where they say, well, I got the email and he told me to sign it. And so I always write in there, please review, once signed, I will forward. If it's an offer, I'll say, and I'm looking this way because you guys are on a separate screen, I'm sorry. Please review, once signed, I will forward to the listing broker. Instead of, here are your documents, sign them. I want to make sure that I've conveyed to them to make sure that they're reviewing it and seeing it. So we got John Doe set in here. He's going to sign. There's no signing order. We got rid of that. I got to sign as well. There's nobody else that I need to have a copy. If you hit this here, custom, you can write a separate email to different people. So there's an email to Brendan right there. And there's an email to John Doe. I usually just use the same email. Please review, once signed, I will forward. Okay, go back up here to next. So you kind of hop from screen to screen in here between, there's a back button that'll show up here, or next. Zipforms, thankfully, will auto-populate people. So John Doe popped right into where he needs to sign. I'm not in there, but let's just say I'm going to sign it myself. If this was a lead paint form. So all you're doing is taking the signature, click on it. So you have to pick who you want to sign. Okay, click on signature and just drag it to wherever it needs to go. You can resize them. For the lead paint form, you probably need to resize it because it needs to be smaller to fit in that little square. If you click on it and hit delete, it'll go away. Typically, if you do one small, it'll bring the next one in small as well. So if you pick a default size, it will continue to use that size. So just grab that corner little dot and you can size them to fit within there, okay? So John Doe's already populated. These little checkboxes, on the lead paint, there's a checkbox that needs to be checked off. If Zipforms will let you check it before you send it, great. If you want them to check it, down here, there's checkbox. Okay, so right here on the side, take checkbox, drag it, you can drop it right on top of the other checkbox. The problem, what I just did was an error because I did it under my name, right? So if I want John Doe to pick that checkbox, I have to do it under his name so it's under his color. So I'm going to go to John Doe, grab the checkbox, drag it over. On your buyer agency agreement, this is there for consent to dual agency showings. So if you need that checkbox in there to check off, or there's a lead paint form that you need checked off, the lead paint form you're usually downloading, so you don't have the ability to edit it. And so you may need to drag this little checkbox on top of that one, okay? So this, when John Doe signs it, he'll have the ability to check this box. If you click on it and you want to check it off for him already, it's a little tricky to find. But you click on it, over here is checkbox value, okay? So you've got it, you're gonna go over here to checkbox value. When I check it, you can see that it auto-populates into that.
Where was that?
What's that, Eddie?
Where was that?
So it's on the right-hand side, and I'll show you another example.
Behind the pictures. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's all the way over here on the right-hand side. So check that. If you want to have him check it on his own, the problem is he might miss it. So I check them off ahead of time most of the time.
It wouldn't go through if he missed it, right?
It depends on if it's optional or not. So one of these over here, I mean, we don't want to get into conditional logics. That's making rules about if he checks this, another thing gets checked. I'm used to, if someone's signing a lead form and I know that they're going to take the 10 days to have the option to do a lead test, I just check off the box and then I'll take their initials and put them next to that box. So they know what they're signing. All right. So you can take their initials, just drag it right over. You can take somebody, go up here, switch people, take their initials, drag them right over. If you've got too many people there, click on it, hit delete, they'll go away. The other thing I can do is if John calls me and says, not on Tuesday. So this agreement is good, but not on Tuesday. So what I did was come over here under John's name, grab text down here, okay? You can grab text, drag it out here, and it'll put a box in there that you can write on. When you click on it, it's the same thing. You can't type in here. You can't type on the form. But if you go over here to where it says add text, so Eddie, this might be under the pictures again. If you move the pictures on your screen, you'll be able to see it. But if you go over to the right, it says add text. You can type in here, not on Tuesday, and it will populate into the document, okay? So if you need to add something into a document, if you have a purchase and sales agreement that a buyer sent you, and your seller says, tell them I'm not removing the mattresses. You can take this text box, put it into the purchase and sales agreement, right in there. I spelled Tuesday wrong. No mattresses, and then if you want them to sign it or initial next to it, go up here, grab the initials, and drop it right next to it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. One of the other things I use this for is take the text box and say this up here, it's not in there, but say that said 14 days. I can take a text box and put it over that 14 days and put X's through it if we're trying to strike something out in a document. So this is getting a little bit detailed, but you can use those text boxes to kind of change an addendum instead of having somebody rewrite the whole darn thing again. And then if you said, okay, it said 14, take another text box, drop it up here, and say we want to make it 5 days. And now that 5 is going to show up on top of the 14, okay? So we've got our names in here. John Doe's ready to sign the addendum. We've checked off the box. that his contingency continues forward. We want to make sure that that says Tuesday. And so we've got everything good to go. You come up here to the corner and you hit send, and off it goes. I can find, it's hiding up here, inbox. So there it is. It got sent. John Doe's email address is my email address. It comes to your client. It says review the document. It does come in your name, so at least they know what they're opening. Review document. It's going to send them into here. We're just going to hit this quick. They're going to have to agree to electronic signatures. It's pretty prominent, so they should be able to see that. Continue. The one downfall, we don't have a lot of pages here. DocuSign, if you hit start, it will just throw you through the pages quick, and it doesn't really give you time to read it. So hence the reason I also write in that email, please take the time to review it. So you can see all that stuff I did. I put the X's over what would have been 14 days down there below. This does come up and say it's required at this point. The checkbox is here. It looks like it does say it's optional, so I can check it. I'm John Doe right now, so I can check the box or not check the box. Here's my language. It says not on Tuesday. John, if it's under John Doe's name, or he can type in it. So if he calls you, a lot of your buyers aren't going to go this far, but if it's under their name, they can type in it. If you put it in there in the same color as his name, and then they can sign it. It's going to ask them to pick. When you're talking to people, they can either draw their initials, which is a nightmare, right? If they're trying to draw it, ask them to select a style. It's just going to have them pick a font, and it's going to be a lot more legible than someone trying to do that. And well, that's my John Doe. But so I'm going to go back to select a style, and when they click on it, if they click, and then make sure. So sometimes people say I signed it, and you don't have it back. Have them go back in and say there's a box that says finish, and make sure you hit the box that says finish. They don't need to save a copy or anything like that. It'll send it to them. Any questions at this point? I know I'm kind of moving fast. But that's the basic steps of getting out of, let me close this, getting out of Zipforms. Take the document, e-sign it. You're going to set it up. Click who you want in there. When you hit next, it'll put you into DocuSign, although it didn't let me in. We'll try one more time, then we'll move on. Pick who's going to sign. Next.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Tara.
So if I get my DocuSign back and it's in my inbox,
Yep.
how do I email it without downloading it?
So when it comes back, let me hit this real quick. When it comes back to you, it will email it to you. So when you say inbox, you're talking about your email inbox? Okay. So because I told myself that I need to sign it as well, let me hit this so it'll show up. All right. So if I go into here and refresh. So this is telling me John Doe looked at it. It should take a second to download. Here it comes. So it's going to send it back to you. John Doe signed it, so I went through my Gmail account and signed it, and I signed it. So here it is. It's the COVID addendum, fully signed. So that should come back to you as an email. You can take this and forward it. Okay? And Tara, this might be part of an answer to your question. You can forward it. 50% of the time, the person who gets it won't be able to open it. I don't know why, but if you just take a forwarded DocuSign PDF and you hit forward, it's attached here, and you send it to Jess or so, it may or may not open. And I don't know why that's the case. So I personally have files on my computer, so I'm going to click on it, hit save as. I would go to my under agreement folder, which is here, and I would save it under that person. Okay? And I would email it out of there just to set yourself up for a little bit more success. But you can take that, you can forward it. If it's a fully signed agreement, you can hit forward, send it to Wendy. If she opens it, great. If she calls you and says, I can't open it, you might have to save it. Does that help, Tara? Okay. So that's going through Zipforms. If somebody sends you a PDF of something, so let's say that COVID addendum, and now we need someone else to sign it. So Margie McDonald sends you that COVID addendum and says, please have your buyer sign this, okay? So now I'm going to go, this is not letting me touch the top of my screen, hold on. So now I'm going to go into just DocuSign itself. And I'm going to keep an eye on the time. So this came in, so this came from Margie, we signed it. You're going to come in, this is that home screen. Excuse me. You have a new one that you need to sign, so it's not in Zipforms. So this is the one that some people run into. They say, well, it's not in Zipforms, how do I sign it? So ignore Zipforms entirely, save that PDF to your computer somewhere, open a new, and you're going to send an envelope. So DocuSign calls them envelopes. Send an envelope. And you're going to see it looks very familiar to what we were looking at before. So there's the box where the document will go, and there's the names of who I'm going to put in there. So upload means putting something back out into the internet. So you got it from your email address, you're going to upload it. So I'm going to go into under agreement. Here's my COVID addendum that John Doe signed. So there's John Doe's signature. So if that was the seller and I had the buyer, Margie sends that to me. I got to get it off of my computer. So I'm going to get in here. I opened a new envelope. It says envelope up here. Upload. And I got to find out where I saved it. So when I open it, it's going to load it up. I'm going to type in who needs to get it and send them a note. Please review. Okay. So this page should look familiar. That was when you got in. This was where you could change the signing order. I only have one person in here, but you can add more people. You can add in other clients. If you're using this program, your clients will start to auto-populate, and it's easier to find. Go into next. This recipient type must be named and emailed. Oh, it's catching this one that we're not supposed to have. So let's get rid of them. So next is similar to when we were in Zipforms. Now you're back to the actual document itself. It's already signed by Brendan. It's already signed by John Doe. You're working with a new client. It's me again, but you're working with a new client, you're going to drag their signature down. Drag the date along with it if you need to. You can put in text. If he says not on Monday, you could add that in. But then if you're changing these things, know that it needs to get initialed. So John Doe wrote not on Tuesday, and then he initialed it over here. So if your buyer is going to put something in there, if you're going to add text to this, it needs to get initialed. And then you're going to hit send and send it on. It's asking me to sign it now because it knows it's me. So the other thing is, if a couple of things to look into, if your buyer calls and says, I didn't get it, and you know it already went out. I don't have it, I didn't get it. You can go down here. I usually go into manage instead of, so you can go into manage here at the top. And there are, so you can go to the sent box. So this is another one that I sent out to John Doe earlier. So John Doe calls and says, I didn't get it, I don't see it. Or it's been 2 days since he's looked at it. Right over here is the resend button. If you hit resend, it'll just fly back out to John Doe, okay? So if they're saying, I don't have it, just say, hold on, I'm gonna get in there and get that back out to you. John Doe calls and says, wait a minute, or there's an email address wrong. So DocuSign will email you and say, John Doe's email address was wrong, we can't get to it. So now you're gonna come in here, it says it's waiting on him because he doesn't have it because his email address is wrong. So if you resend it, it's not going to go anywhere. This little drop-down arrow gives you some options. So correct is something I use a lot. So if you go in here to correct, it's going to pull John Doe back up again. You'll see this correcting at the top. It won't let anyone get in there to sign anything once you're correcting it, okay? So it'll pull it back up again. John Doe's email address. You say, oh, it's B. Battenfelder 2. I didn't realize I needed the 2. You drop that in there. Okay, I'm going to take it out just because it is the right email address. So going in and correcting allows you to fix email addresses. It will allow you to also come back in, and he says, I wanted, this was a different one, but I wanted, I wanted to say, not on Monday again. You can come in here and fix that. And then instead of send, because it's already gone out, you're going to hit correct. So this is if you've got something out there and somebody says something's wrong or I didn't get it. You can try resend. If they still didn't get it, go back in there to correct. And you'll be able to jump in there, change email addresses, move signature lines. Or if it says 14 days and you need to make it 10 days, you can go in with that text box and change it to 10 days instead of 14 days, okay? The one other thing that's in here is void, so I'm gonna get rid of this one. If somebody says to you, I printed it and I brought it back to the office, instead of having to sit out here and say, well, John Doe's not gonna sign this because he just brought it in on paper, come in here and hit void, and then type in a reason just so you know why. He brought it in as a paper copy and hit void. And it will cancel that. If somebody has an offer out there that they want to change, it's not a bad idea to go in and void it just in case you don't want them signing the wrong one. So if there's something that's out there that you don't want someone to sign, come in over here and find that void. If they've already signed it, or if somebody's already signed, if it's fully signed, you can't void it, of course, but if it's in process. Any questions there? There's only a few minutes left. I've got one more thing to show you, if there's no questions. Okay, so if somebody sends you, DocuSign only works on PDFs. So these little red documents, you can see, it's not gonna let me, you can see right here, it says PDF. So it only allows you to sign a PDF. If somebody sends you a Word document, so this says doc instead of PDF, it won't let you put this in, okay? These are rare, but sometimes Wendy will send you something like an addendum or a wiring instructions or something that's on a Word document. Just a quick, you can open this So these are specs for a Saco River Run house. They're in a Word document. They're editable. If you go up here to, so you need to make this a PDF. So you can go up here to print. So you want to print this, and you can, a lot of people will do, they'll print it at work and then scan it, but you can skip that step. If you hit print, there's two options in here. Microsoft has a Microsoft Print to PDF, okay? So you can take this Word document or any other document. You can even take a picture. Pictures sometimes work. You can take a picture. Say you have a picture of a map and you want to create it into a PDF so you can load it as an attachment on a listing. You can print to a PDF. So this is a Word document right now. I can hit Microsoft Print to PDF. And it should be in your printer selection. So you'll see Canon upstairs, Canon downstairs. So there's downstairs, there's upstairs. I'm going to go in and find Microsoft Print to PDF. Hit OK. And instead of actually printing it anywhere, it's going to ask me where do you want to save it. So I'm going to put this is Tomasello, so I'm going to put it under Tomasello and save it. So if I put it in here, and I'm going to put specs draft 5. It's going to now save that as a PDF. This works 90% of the time. The other one that's in here that I use, print, you have to download this one. If you catch me later, I can show it to you. Primo PDF does exactly the same thing. It's just a little bit better at it. So Primo PDF, you have to download that. And if you want to see that, catch me later and I can show you how to get that. So Primo PDF shows up just like you want to print it. Instead of, I don't know why that keeps popping up, but create PDF. It does the same thing as we just did. It asks you where you're going to sign it, and it creates it as a PDF. So I use this if I have a picture of something that I want to put in as a document or I want to get signed, I use that Primo PDF. Now, if I go into DocuSign and I want that Tomasello thing to sign, I'm going to go into New, send an envelope. Sign a document as if there's something that you need to sign. I don't use that often. Templates I've never created because Zipforms does that for us. So we don't need to use templates. Send an envelope. I'm going to go over here and upload. So I'm going to go find what it is I want signed. And I saved it under Tomasello. And there's the Word document, but I can't use that. So I want to go down here, specs draft 5, which is what I signed it as. You can see it's red, so it's a PDF and not a Word document. So if I try to load this, now I just proved myself wrong. Well, that's interesting. Maybe it works now. It's taking it. But if you need it as a PDF, maybe you can sign a Word document now. You can upload it and go from there. If you're correcting and you need to put the right document in there, you can do the same thing. Save it as a PDF, go back in and say, oh, there's an updated one in here. I'm going to go in and pick the updated one. So that's the extent of it. Is there anything that looked confusing or you want me to hit again real quick? We only have a minute or so left.
Good, thank you very much.
I know there's a lot there, but once you start using it, you're going to be able to streamline a little bit better. The ultimate goal is to be able to use Jess, use me, use Wendy, Chris, reach out to us as a support to say, look, I'm getting it here, but it's stuck. Or my client called and said, they're not getting the email. How do I change that? But you should be able to get in there, even from Zipforms, and take those documents that you have been using and get them signed by people at this point.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan.
Brendan, do you have your name sign at the office?